What's happening, guys? It's Jason from Aircooled Vintage Works. I'm here with our bay window Westy project that you may have seen. I made a video on Instagram earlier in the year showing how to remove all of this baked on bleeding rust. And what this is when cars will sit outside for years, they get condensation either from weather change or rain or things like that. And it just bleeds down over the paint and you get this rust coverage over it. And some guys will leave that because they like that look, but for a lot of us, we like to get down to the original paint because there's a ton of blue underneath this that you can get to come back out and then polish, and that's what we're going to do. But I just want to show you this. This is absolutely real. This is how we found the bus. It hasn't been added. You know, I had somebody think that it was tomato sauce put on the paint, which is ridiculous, but you can take some water, spray this down, and you can see it doesn't come off. Take a rag, rub it as hard as you can. It's on there. But that's real. Nothing came off. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you the process that I did on the door on this bus, which has been viewed like 30 million times now, and I get questions about it all the time. People want to know, what do you do? How do you get this off of here? So I'm going to go through it a little bit slower this time, show you all the products that you need to use and how you do it so that you can get all of this bleeding rust off and get that blue to come back so that you can buff it. I'm just going to show you right here on this apron piece. This looked like this before I did this part, and I got all of that bleeding rust off, took it all the way back to the blue, and then polished it. It's kind of hard to see, but if you look over here, you can see the reflection of my fingers really well in that paint. And that's what the whole bus is going to look like after you do all of it. So today, we'll probably do this section so you get a good look of what it looks like. And you got bleeding rust all over the top, around here. This paint's just a little bit covered with some of the rust. We'll get all of that off. We'll prep it, and then we'll buff it so that it looks just like that lower piece right there. So stay tuned, I'm going to show you the whole thing. Okay, so let's talk about the process and the products that you use. So if you come in closer, you can see, I want you to get a good look at this. All of this staining is what you're trying to remove, because you can see there's nice blue paint underneath it. If you look real close where it's kind of light, you can see the paint underneath it. So how do you get this off? So I'll show you what I do. It's just two products. You can find these pretty much everywhere. The first is quadruple zero steel wool. You can get this stuff at automotive stores or Home Depot, Lowe's, those types of places. And what it is just these stainless steel wafers like this. And you can see it's real fine. So this isn't going to eat up the paint. It's basically just going to remove that top layer. It's kind of like what you would use to clean like steel pots in the kitchen. It's just not impregnated with soap. This is literally just the steel wool. So you need something for this to glide on, because if you just take this and scratch on here, you're going to rip everything up. So what I do is I get 409. This is it right here. You can get this, again, at Home Depot, Target, lots of places in the United States sell it. In other countries, it's sold under different names, and I don't know what they are, but you can look it up. But basically, 409 is a cleaner. So if you use this on this and the surface, it glides real nice and smooth and won't rip up the paint, and it's going to clean everything that it takes out of there. So you're not going to get stuck with big grimy, stuff all over the paint. You're going to remove it with this. These are what I use. Let me show you what I do. The process is super simple. So come in close. Let's take a look at this section. So let's just say from here to here. You can see you've got some dark staining here. You can see you've got some light staining here. This is what we're going to try to remove. So what I do is I take my steel wool and get it nice and soaked with 409. Soak the area that I'm going to spray or work on. And you can see my finger, nothing happens. Nothing is happening. I take this and it's like magic. See how it just glides right across? And it just takes all that staining off. That's all it took. I wasn't pushing real hard. You watch what I did. Now I'm going to take a nice clean rag and just wipe it off. Come in and look. This is what we're left with. Here's your original paint, your original primer. You've got some areas where it was thicker and it destroyed some of the paint, but now you've got this nice blue section to work with. Okay, so you saw it done. Now I'm going to show you how to do the whole thing. So now that we've done this section, let's do this whole hatch right here. Same process. We're going to get our steel wool, we're going to get our 409, and we're just going to work a section at a time until we're all the way done. So let's go across the bottom first. And go slow. There's no reason to fly through this. You can always come back and touch parts up that need a little bit more attention. The main thing is to just get it started, to see what you're working with. And you can see that paint's just popping right through. You got nice burn through on the original paint right there, which is cool. If you like that patina look, this is exactly what you're looking for. And as this gets dirty, you just swap to a new piece. You don't want to keep forcing dirt back into it with your steel wool. Just get yourself another one. Just nice light pressure. I'm not forcing it. I'm not trying to dig into that paint. I'm just trying to go right across the surface and clean all of that off. And look at the result from just that section that we did. So let's go across the top now. So we'll go back. And just work a small section at a time. There's no race. You don't need to try and do it all in one pass. And you'll feel it'll start to get smoother as you're going. And that's a good time to stop and check and see where you're at. Just wipe it off. Take a look. We got a couple of sections here that need a little bit more. And just be mindful as you're going. You know, old paint gets thin. And if you keep going over the same portion over and over and over again, you will burn through it because it's thin paint, and this is going to remove some. So a good rule of thumb is that once it starts to feel smooth and you're starting to see color all around it, it's a good time to stop. Check your work, see where you're at. So far, we made a big improvement. So let's keep going across the top. One thing you're going to notice too as you go is your steel wool's going to become less and less effective. That means that you've pretty much burned through all the cutter that you're getting out of this metal. That's a good time to swap. We're pretty close. About time to get a new piece, but again, we're still removing. So I'm gonna keep going a little bit longer with this piece. Let me finish this little section, then I'll come over to the other side again so you can see it. Come over here, we're going to finish this up. So you can see, I just want to point this out, you can see how just covered in bleeding stains this whole section is. So we'll remove all that right now. Get a little bit of 409 on there just to let it glide. I mean, look at that section now. There's no more staining on there. Yeah, you've got burn through that happened from the sun years ago, but all that staining was just evaporating. Last little section here. Again, just take your time, glide over it. You'll get a feel for it. You'll know when it's pretty much off, which I think we're there. Tell me that's not a huge improvement over where we just were. So let's do this section of the tailgate, and then I think we're pretty much there. Same thing. Hose it down, small section at a time. So I can feel it starting to get really, really smooth now. So I'm just going to flip my steel wool over to a fresh section. Just finish this panel off right here. You guys remember what it looked like when we started, right? Okay, check this out. Where's all that staining? It's gone. Totally gone. Tell me that's not 100% improvement from where we just started. Okay, let's do the rest of it. See, I've still got a clean section of this piece here. Right here, there's no muddy water looking stuff on it like there is over here. So I'm going to use this section. I can probably finish this panel with this piece and then swap. Just to save time, I'm going to keep going with it, but you can swap pieces. Some people ask, how should I do it? Should I go in a circular pattern like this? Should I just go back and forth? Honestly, it doesn't matter. Whatever's working, go with that. Most of the small surface scratches that this is going to leave will be removed in the buffing process next. So you just do it however it's working for you. And if you're having good results, stay with that. Let's wipe this off. Oh, no more staining. All gone. And we got one section left. And now in this section, there was an original Tourist USA decal on here. And you can see how it kind of burned through. So we want to make sure that we maintain that. So I'm just going to be really light over this section, but everything else just like normal. So again, spray it down. Make sure your piece is still clean. And then just like we did on the other side, right over the top. I'm going to skip that sticker as much as I can. And once I get the rest of this part done, I'm just going to go over that sticker section one time. Because it's got a little bit here. I'm just going to quick pass. And I think I'll call that good. So let's wipe that off. And there it is. You've got the entire panel now clear of all of that bleeding rust. You remember it looked just like this. Actually looked worse than this. And now it's gone. There's none. So now the next step is we're going to make it look shiny, just like this. Okay, guys, so now you can see this panel's done. It's prepped. It's nice and smooth. You can run your hand on it. There's not any real imperfections on it other than what it earned. But this is ready to get buffed. So you can do this in a number of different ways. You could do a multi-step buffing process with a bunch of different products, but I'm going to show you what I do. And it's probably different than what you do. You can do it your way, but this is what works for me, especially on these old single-stage Volkswagens. So what I have is I use this old single-speed Milwaukee buffer. These are great. Definitely heavy. It's a battle axe, but it'll do the job. And I use these wool pads. These are nice. They're a bit aggressive, but for old, worn-out single-stage paint like your Volkswagen or your Chevy or something like that, these are what you need. This is what it takes to cut through that paint and give some life back to it you can definitely go new school and get one of the foam pad setups like this. Use one of those dual speed buffers that use these foam pads. Those work great. They're mainly for new cars that come with a clear coat on them, so they're not quite as aggressive as these single speed wool pad ones. I prefer this because we really need to get aggressive to get a shine back out of that paint. Anything that's been out in the weather, as long as this has, really needs to have a cut put to it. And so to do that, what I use is the 3M line of stuff here. So if you're an automotive refinisher, then you already know what these are. But for those that don't, this is the rubbing compound. It's a yellow bottle. This is a bit aggressive. The next step down would probably be this one in the purple bottle. If your paint's not as gnarly as ours is, you could start with this and then finish off with the polish like this before you wax it to lock in the shine. These are good products. You can find them everywhere. Amazon has them. So I'm going to start with this and just see where we get. And if it's prepped correctly, you're going to start to see a shine come through as we make that first pass. And it'll just get better from there. So we'll do that now. Before we start, I just want to point out, there is no reflection. All you can see is a shadow on my fingers, but you can't see any reflection in this paint. Now watch. Now we're going to buff it. So I'm going to start with the aggressive compound that we talked about. I've got my wool pad on here. So what I do is I'll put a little bit on here because it's a brand new pad. You just kind of work that in a little bit with your hand just so it's not going to fly everywhere. It's going to make a mess, so there's nothing you can do. And then just get a little bit on this panel, and then we buff. Just nice light pressure. Ooh, that's messy. Now I want you guys to just come over here real quick and look at this. They already got a reflection in there. Can you see that? You can see the reflection of my hand in there. You got lots of gloss in this paint now. And that was just the first sort of quick pass. We're going to do this whole panel, but do you see that? Look at the difference in depth between this and this, which is dead. And this, now you've got some color to it. So let's keep going. And just move right along a little bit more. Same process. And I'm not digging into it. I'm just lightly keeping an edge. Just stop, check. Sometimes you got to cut it more than once. You know, we've got some dry spots right here, so we'll cut this panel one more time. I think a lot of guys don't like these foam pads or these wool pads because they make a mess, but they sure do cut really well. And that's what we're looking for. Can you see the difference already? I hope it's showing up on camera. It's hard because it's blue and it's in direct sun, but you can see my whole hand in this now, and if I go over here, you can't see anything. So we're going to do the last section again. I'm just going to be real careful about this. I don't want to lose that. I still want it to kind of be ghosted in there so you see it. Last section here. Make sure you use a clean rag and just go back over it real quick just to wipe any excess residue off. But, I mean, the difference should be pretty obvious. You can see reflection everywhere now on that whole panel. It looks a lot like this now instead of this, which is what we started with. And that's just a cut. So the next step is we're going to get some polish on it. So let's do that now. So you couldn't see the reflection before, but check this out. Now you can really see it. You can see my hand in there. It's a little bright out, but if you look deep into the paint, you can see the full reflection of my hand in there now. In the blue. Before it was completely dead and chalky, it looked like this. Can't see anything. Now you can see it. Okay, so now we're finished cutting the panel. You can see you've got reflection everywhere. We're able to save this USA ghosted logo in there. So now we're going to polish it with this. And one thing I'd like to point out to you guys watching is just look at the difference between this panel here and this panel here. This is pretty much what we started with over here. You can see it's just dead and scuzzy. There's a lot of junk on top of it. And now you've got that nice original paint. It's super smooth now. And we're going to polish it. So that'll lock in all that work that we just did. So fresh pad on here. Got the polish. Same process as you just saw. Since it's a brand new pad, I'm just going to get a little bit on here. Just to get it ready. Rub it in a little bit. It's going to make a mess as soon as we put it on there, but what are you going to do? Ooh, good catch. Just get some on the panel. Start buffing. Nice and slow. Even pressure. Whoa. Just wipe it off a little bit, see what we got. I mean, you can see that it just got a deeper shine in it now. This is going to have to go over a couple more times, but you can see it's just getting better every single time. More reflection, more definition. The paint's starting to feel, you know, like it should. Again, old car, never going to be perfect, but a lot nicer than what we started with. So we'll continue on, finish this whole panel. I'll probably do it twice and then go over it with some, you know, carnauba wax or something like that to just finish locking this in. And as long as you maintain this with wax, it'll stay just like this. I think that's pretty good. Looks great. So now that we're finished with the tailgate, I want to show you guys again what we started with. So if you come over here and look, you see you've got really dry, chalky paint like this here. You've got some of that bleeding staining right here, that's all that rust coloring. That's what the tailgate looked like before. And then we went through the whole process and we ended up with this. This whole panel right here is done. And you can see it's got good reflection in it. And if the sun wasn't directly on it, you'd actually be able to see some real depth to it. But you get this in the shade, you'll get a better idea of what I'm talking about. So I just want to answer a couple questions that people ask about this process. And the most common one I get is, why don't you just wet sand it? And I'm not a big fan of wet sanding myself. The reason being, what you're trying to do is preserve original paint. You're trying to keep as much color on this as you can. And if you were to go and wet sand this with 1000 grit or 2000 grit, what's going to happen is you're just going to rip that top layer of paint right off. The benefit of using the steel wool like I showed you with the 409 on it is, you're just gliding across the surface, you're removing contamination off of it without destroying or taking off too much paint. And you'll see this car spent a lot of time outside. So as you can see here, this is original primer right here. This is some bare metal underneath it. So this thing's faded out. And so you've got real thin paint here. If I was just to wet sand this, it would just go away. You'd have nothing but bare metal left. The benefit of doing it the way I showed you is you have the opportunity to save as much paint as you can, so that once you go through the buffing process like we did, you got a lot of color left on the car. And it looks really good if you're trying to preserve an original paint job. That brings me to the other question that people ask me. How come it doesn't look like a new car like you see on the truck over here? Got lots of depth, lots of reflection. You're never going to get a new car finish doing something like this. Sure, you can wet sand it and you can buff it, and it tends to look one-dimensional when you do that, kind of like a bowling ball. And that's not the look I'm going for. I want it to look vintage, but preserved, and that's what we have right here. And I'm going to do the rest of the bus, and then you'll see in the future video the whole thing finished, and I think you'll agree it looks really good for what it is. It's never going to be a show car. That's not the idea. You just want it to look well preserved and clean. So if you like what you saw, definitely subscribe to our channel so that you can see some of the other videos we're going to put up. We've got some things in store for you that I'm going to get to soon. But follow us on all the social medias. We're easy to find. We're at Aircooled Vintage Works. You can't miss us. And stay tuned. We've got some other stuff coming up on this bus and a lot of the other projects that we got going. Check us out.